But yet, every time, it's that.
It's hard.
It's hard.
You
Every
have to
time.
communicate how you're going to communicate.
Right.
There's two things that always goes wrong on search, or could possibly go wrong, and Katie hit on one of them, and the other one is navigation. Communication and navigation. There's two things that's gonna go wrong, that's gonna be two red.
That's what I was getting.
And, tomorrow, that, navigation is gonna go away for you, because I'm gonna get you with the maps tomorrow.
Y'all be
All right.
rescuing me.
So, it's getting past everybody's bedtime, so we're gonna hit you with one more. And it's gonna be me, and I'm gonna be right here.
Right,
So it's gonna keep you awake.
I'm ready.
Now, you're gonna love this. This is probably the longest section you've had today.
No, that's not, my first one was longer than
Okay. But we're gonna go over this. We're gonna hit it pretty fast, and then we'll see you guys in the morning. All right? All right, so, search tactics. This is big, this is broad, this has a lot involved in it. That said, basic, what you're doing is all about containment and elimination, right? Whenever these guys are talking about that circle they keep talking,
red marker,
all right,
red marker.
you've got the last place someone was seen, okay? How long ago was it? An hour. 2 hours, okay? If they can walk 2 miles an hour, and you've had 2 hours, that's 4 miles. So from here, you got 4 miles all the way around. Time distance gap, okay? Now, whenever you show up, you can contain that area. If you've got roadways cutting like this, and you can stick a cop on each one of these, and they can look down that road so you know nobody's going out, you've contained it. Now, no matter how much longer it goes, they're within that area, or you'll see them go out of it, theoretically, right? Depending on the probability of detection of the people here. That's oversimplifying, but that is really what you're working on. If you can contain and eliminate, if you've got a big river going through here, they didn't cross that big river, right? More than likely. If you've got a big road cutting through here, okay, we keep narrowing it down, and we want to eliminate areas. You've got a big field over here. Someone can usually go out and eliminate that field pretty quick, right? Contain and eliminate. And a lot of that has to do with that probability of detection makes a big difference. Can you actually say they weren't here? Now, and to be honest, you could go out in that field and you can say, I don't see a body. Would you have seen all the tracks? Or be able to tell their tracks from someone else's tracks? So you already know you're not going to have a 100% probability of detection. There may be clues out there that you miss. But if you can get it high enough, that helps. You can be like, well, I don't see anything obvious was here, so maybe there's something more important we should check out over here or here. Or right off the bat, if you've already got these things blocking off, my areas of the highest probability, high probability areas, where I'll send to if there's something that's attracting them somewhere, or say there are, I don't know, you've got pig barns over here and it stinks. There's things that you would not out and out think right off the top of your head, but if this side smells worse and that side smells better, you'll probably turn towards it. So it's that situational awareness, all right? So, and not trying to make this any longer, but something to think about. One of my favorite books is called Surviving in the Outdoors by Byron Durantple. I used to read it all the time when I was a kid. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. Tells a story of this guy named Frank, good friend of his. No matter where they went, Frank was always getting hurt. He's the guy that's always turning his ankle. He's the guy that's getting bit by a snake. He's the guy that's reaching up and grabbing a branch. It's not his fault, he's just accident prone, right? Wrong. He is doing something. He is being casual. He is not quite being as cautious as everybody else. Again, that goes back into situational awareness. There's things that we can chalk off as like, oh, it was just by chance, or oh, it's just accident prone, and you've got to stay focused. So again, on probability of detection and things like that, it's how much you can focus and how much is actually going on right there. All right, so initiation of searching tactics takes place concurrent with establishing the search area. A lot of words, right? I'm establishing the search area. Last known place or last known point, distance, time gap, how far could he have gone? That big circle is the max. That's whenever we talk about that 95%, because what assumptions are we making? Is he on foot? Has he got a four-wheeler? Did he walk so far and then get in a car? Okay, those outliers are part of where that extra 5%, you know, he talks about 95% of people are gonna be found in here. Randomly, dude called a helicopter, came and landed and picked him up. Not very likely, but it's possible, okay? So that's within those parameters. All right, I had written a bunch of notes, but we're gonna blow through them real quick because this won't make it too long. Thing to remember while we're doing this, there are standard operating procedures, and oftentimes we'll talk about standard operating guidelines, because when you say procedures, you're kind of held to them, right? If someone asks you what your procedure is, and you say, and then you did something a little different, they're like, why didn't you follow procedure? Whereas if you say guideline, a little more leeway. But it's important to know what those are. It's important to know the chain of command. You've got people that know a lot, but if they go rogue, it throws off the whole process, okay? It can be slow going, but whenever you work together as a team, overall it does better than just you going lone wolf and trying to go out there and find somebody, all right? Search tactics categorized as passive. Passive or active kind of makes sense. You're waiting for them to come to you, or active, you're going to look for them. So passive is confinement and attraction. Passive is Johnny left home and they haven't seen him in the last 30 minutes. And you've got people that have circled the block and he's not out of it. And now you're saying, hey Johnny, you're not in trouble. You know, mom's got dinner going. It's all good. That's passive. You have contained the area so he's not getting further away, and you are either watching specific attractants like his house or the swimming pool or his buddy's house to see if he moves and comes back, or you go in active and you go in and find him. You're still doing the containment and elimination either way. It's just doing it in different forms. You might be sneaky and actually bait him with something he would like. And that could sound bad, but that could be like his favorite aunt. Get them to come in and come hang out somewhere, he's more likely to come to them. You know what I mean? Especially if there might be strife at home, right? Say, well, you don't have to go home, but we need you to go over here and do this. Come up with something. Dogs, horses, kids love them both. They may be more likely. A lot of times whenever I'm going out, if I think I'm hot on something or I'm getting close, I might call in Katie. Katie is far more approachable than a 6'7", 350-pound man with a big old bushy beard, right?
Depends on what we're doing.
Yeah, it does. That indeed. But attraction techniques, smoke. People are drawn to smoke. They're curious what's going on. Fire, sirens, whistles, horns, loudspeakers. Can you guys think of any other things that would be attractants? Depends on the situation. If it's a night, lights, definitely, right? Music. Could be animals. Could be you've got a pasture over here with horses in it. I'm going to be drawn to it. Could be the easiest traveled trail, right? If you've got tons of searchers up in here and this kid doesn't want to be found, and there's one area that you've purposefully left a little open, it may kind of be the way you want to. You may actually be kind of pushing him that way.
Flushing him out.
Flushing him, but not like aggressive, like kind of being crafty about it, right?
It's his idea.
Kind of so it's his idea. So you got to think about what would attract them. And it depends on, you know, if this is a dementia patient, if it's a despondent patient. You know, we talked about that lost person behavior. Say a despondent, somebody, they might not be outright suicidal, but maybe they're depressed, they're alone, they feel, often they don't go very far, and they will be kind of close to people, but still separated. So like if it's on a trail or something, so maybe they like to get off the trail and go underneath the bridge and sit under the bridge. If it is a autistic child, there's going to be certain things that will attract him more or her more than a geriatric patient. You know, it used to be people would always go downhill or go towards water to find civilization when they're lost. Nowadays people go uphill for cell signals. Think of the attractants. Okay? Confinement techniques. And you can get into a lot of these, and again, a lot of this, I'm just wanting to stimulate your mind to think about this stuff, because these will be the things that you deal with. So tomorrow in the mock search, whenever they're telling you about who you're looking for, and you're writing it down, you're asking questions, you know, is it a little girl? Is it an older man? Is it a whatever? And think about what might draw them to where you would be looking. So, point control at road intersections. So this is cool. If you had a road going through here, and a crossroad like that, if you had one guy, you'd stick him right in the middle. That way you could see maybe if somebody crossed this road. maybe you can't completely confine, because we like to talk about, containing. Maybe not. Maybe you've got a road cut through over here. You've only got 3 or 4 guys. Well, this guy can see all of this, and it kind of keeps that border, right? Sometimes with police, if you had a big road that cut through half of it and it's circular, maybe if they patrol the road, they have a higher likelihood. The person might still get by, but it might. So you've got to think about points of control where you are more likely to see things. Point of control at a trail intersection, same thing. You know, if you're at the very middle of a trail section, for one, you might see them or the other hikers that you see go by. You talk to, maybe they've seen them or talked to them, things like that. People coming out of the search area asked if they saw any evidence of lost subject. On this, it's tricky. That's a whole can of worms. You don't want to give them a lot of information because sometimes people start parroting it back to you or you're giving them stuff. Say, hey, somebody's missing. Have you seen anybody out that's looked lost or somebody that's no? Have you seen anybody? Has anybody else been on the trail? Okay, well, who are they? Or you might say, well, we're looking for, and you can give more information than that. We're looking for a young boy or a young man or something like that, but you don't tell them what they're wearing or you don't tell them what they're whatever. You want them to give you the information. People going, running roads and trails with ATVs, vehicles, mountain bikes, and trail hikers sounds great. If people are already doing that, you definitely want them looking. You want to be cautious with whenever you decide that you are going to start doing stuff like that. Because if you have a trail system and you can cover it real quick with an ATV, sounds great. What if on the flip side, you closed off all the trails, did not allow any ATVs on there, and you had some man trackers that could see where the freshest sign was and follow right to him? We had one recently where an old man went missing on his side-by-side. Before we even got out there, everybody and their cousin and brother and everything brought their side-by-sides and four-wheelers in and ran all over the place. You couldn't tell, and they were all the same kind. It was like a Kubota something something, and like all of them's tires the exact same tire. So you'd go back there and you'd be like, yep, somebody ran over here, somebody ran over here. I don't know at this point. All I see is a bunch of tracks.
But even in the sense of the Amish girl, when they went on that search, the Amish community had already done an initial search for her, and there was no evidence whatsoever like that anybody could have used because people have been all over the place.
And pollution is something we deal with. As man trackers, we deal with it all the time, right? We get a lot of pollution. We've got to look for those areas that we might get that one sign that we don't get other places. Like if we come up to a car, sometimes right underneath that door where they first step out, maybe the only spot in that area that doesn't have 30 other steps on it, okay? Mounted patrol, sometimes they can do a lot of damage and sometimes they miss things, but guess what? You can really tell the difference between a hoof and a footprint. So sometimes sending them, you certainly can tell the difference between them and four-wheeler tires. So maybe if you're looking for a horse, send a four-wheeler. Maybe if you're looking for a four-wheeler, send a horse. You just, no, I'm serious. You just gotta think about these things.
It would be obvious, but
It's
no,
not.
It's not.
Because people want to help.
Yes.
And you get a lot of volunteers and they'll run in there. So you've got to think about what that's going to do to your scene. And if you're not going to be able to see it as well, maybe try a different approach. Okay? So, 4 types of active search techniques can be utilized. That's not really, they're going to title this 4 types. And this is going to end up being like hasty searches, grid searches, all kinds of things. But you can figure out any way you want to in any mixture of these. You just need to know the pros and cons, the probability of detection that pushes onto the search, and what's going to work best for your search. So we had one where a gentleman was in an explosion, and it ended up being that we probably weren't going to find him. We might find a tooth or a belt buckle. And there was a lot of damage to the surrounding area. So we did a grid search. All of us packed in really tight, going really slow, taking stuff, moving stuff out of the way. That was the best search. Little girl goes missing in 100 acres. Maybe a hasty team on the trails looking for her, calling her name, is going to move a lot faster. They won't check every little thing, but they might find her faster, okay? So it's not that one of these is just the best. It's you got to figure out which one works best for you. So type 1, this is going to be speed. They don't even call them hasty teams anymore. And I say they, it's funny because so many of us still call them hasty teams. It's a hasty team. but they call them rapid response teams or rapid teams, or there's official language, but it's whatever you would like. So rapid response to an area of high probability by immediately available resources. So you're either talking to people and you find out where they're most likely to be by that. You look at a map, you look for attractants, you look for trails. Sometimes you're not specifically looking for that person. For us, if there's a bunch of trails that intersect in the middle, or all the trails come to one point before they go somewhere else, man, we may bust up there to see if we can get any sign that they've been there and a direction of travel. Because if you can get a direction of travel, 3 steps going that way, is that going to be my area's highest probability? No. And he talks about cutting sign. If I've got a direction of travel here, while someone's working that, I might send somebody here to cut across. Because if they see sign down here, these people are just going to jump ahead. Oftentimes, whenever we're man tracking, we'll do that. We'll call it leapfrogging. I'll be on track. Thule will jump way ahead and cut across and see if he can cut sign. If he can absolutely identify it, man, we'll just keep on going. Containment and elimination. It's the whole hammer and anvil thing. We want to find them fast, but we don't want to be so fast that we screw it up. That is one of the downsides to the type 1 considerations. If you go too fast, your probability of detection is low. If you go to certain areas, you're not in other areas. And it's about your resources. If you have highly skilled rapid response team members that are situationally aware and they can pick up on sign easy, they're really good for this. Your average volunteer, though, are only going to see what jumps out to them. Or they will get such tunnel vision. If you told them they're wearing a blue hoodie and they took the hoodie off because they got hot, they might even have it tied around their waist, but they had a pink shirt on under that. They could talk to the person they're looking for and keep on going. So, pros and cons. So the assumption is, for a rapid one, that you are looking for a responsive, that went everywhere. I'm going to keep talking if one of y'all want to come put it back together. So, that is assuming that it's a responsive person, because you are putting a line through a large area and you're calling out the name. You're looking for movement. You want to see them. If they're buried underneath some underbrush or something, that's going to make it a lot harder. You're depending on a high skill of the searcher, high awareness, and preferably you're depending on someone being responsive to your search. Especially depending on elapsed time. Because we talk about the time distance gap, and if they can move at 2 miles an hour, 4 hours in, you talk about, okay, so that's 8 miles, right? You keep going, at a certain point they're going to stop and rest. It's not going to stabilize that way. Or they're going to start running the risk of getting hurt. Thank you very much, Katie. Or all kinds of stuff, okay? So, it provides an immediate show of effort, which sometimes that does a lot for the people there that can get in your way. The family members that don't know what to do, they're very upset, and you're at least sending somebody out. Maybe you have very, very little information to go on right off the bat. And instead of just sitting there being like, we don't know, we send out a small group that is not going to damage things. Because first, do no harm, right? Do no harm to yourself, do no harm to the person you're looking for, and do no harm to the clues. That is important. So show of effort. It can help define the search area by gathering information. You pick up a random clue. If you had no clue, but you sent out a hasty team this way and one this way, and this guy happened to find one, that at least gives you a direction of travel, starts focusing in an area. Okay? Hasty teams, you'd love for them to be sign cutting as well. Looking for clues, looking for tracks, looking for anything they can. Okay? Clue consciousness is critical, obviously. We talk about being observant and aware. It often results in determining where not to search further. So if you've got an area of dense woods, and you've got an open field, and you don't know which way the person could have gone, and you have limited manpower, what's the first thing you eliminate? Open field. You can do it much quicker. If you can determine they're not in that field, and don't do it halfway. You still want to eliminate it. Because they're laying down out there and there's a little dip. But you can eliminate the field faster than you can eliminate the woods. And if you've done that, you've cut your search area in half, that's valuable. Okay? So speed. It's always a war between quality and speed. Because all of this, if somebody's missing, if somebody's gone, time is of the essence. But if you rush, you can screw up. So, I mean, you're just constantly doing like that. All right, pre-planning is crucial for the availability and effective use of Type 1 resources. And again, typically Type 1 resources are the ones that are going to be more capable and have higher training. They're the guys or girls that can whip out maps and not get lost themselves. Because if you're going for speed, and all of a sudden I throw you a UTM and I said, move, and you don't have a map, you don't have a GPS, and you don't have a compass, and you wouldn't know how to use it if you did type thing, that's a real bad idea. So pre-planning, you gotta know what your resource is capable of and the best use for them. So, these are either attributes or things that Type 1's gonna do. They're gonna have good investigation, they're gonna be able to talk to people and figure out what they're looking for, where they need to go. Thorough checks of the last known position or point. Terminology is not something we're gonna force on you right now, but it is something you'll have to pay attention to whenever Joe starts talking to you. Because there's differences between knowing that person stood right here and knowing the person was in this building. Makes a big difference. Same with like a park or an area. Okay? Follow known or suspected routes. Man trackers, we show up. Do we always know what the tread looks like? Do we know what kind of shoe they were in? Could be somebody with a fairly average shoe, and we've got a million tracks going out. We may have to pick the most likely route, either based off something we're seeing in the tracks, or something we're seeing in a possible attractant or something, and say if there's 30 tracks in here, and there's 3 going out towards the most likely area, I might stick a different tracker on each of those 3, or we start working that way until we can narrow it down. Because if we could eliminate it, that can be valuable. Running trails. That hasty search, it's dangerous to send a bunch of people on foot running trails because they will only do it so fast. You can get some benefit out of an ATV or a horse, but they may miss stuff. But they might also end the search really quick for the person just walking down the trail. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to judge what your likelihood is. Perimeter checks are great. Maybe in conjunction with confinement. If you've got somebody that can't handle out in the woods or isn't great at navigation or anything else, if you can put them in a vehicle and have them run the roads around the area of containment that you're looking for, because a lot of people want to be found, they may be walking down the road. You know, or if they run into somebody, because you want to use your assets the best possible way. Sign cutting obviously is a good one. Road patrols, check attractions, check hazardous areas, check drainages. Whenever he whips out those maps later, well I guess tomorrow, you're going to look for things that make you think, baseball diamond, playground, mall, gas stations are great for multiple reasons. One, it's an attractant. There's a lot of stuff people stop by to get refreshments and stuff. 2, most of them have cameras. So if you stop by there, even if it has not been recently, they can review that, and it can be somebody that does not have a lot of field qualification. All I got to do is sit there and watch the camera feed. You know what I mean? So you got to think about what different attractions are. Hazardous areas. Whenever I talked about that creek going through here, that doesn't mean I won't send somebody walking down through here to see if they've gone in it. It means they are less likely to be over here on this side. This is actually a good track trap because even if they hit it, maybe now they're walking down the edge of it so that they don't go in it. So that may be an area of high probability. Not on the other side, but on this side. Ridge running. Get up high where you can see it. You're down in a trail. We've done this a bunch of times. Some of these trails are like down in little gulfs or valleys. You'd be up on the hill. You can see down in the trail or you can see off over here. Because you hate to be down in a little ravine and they're 100 foot that way. They're just behind some trees. Bastard searches are crazy. Because the theory is the old school term of bastard means an illegitimate child. It is not fathered by what you thought it was. If a search is not fathered by what you thought it was, and you're looking over here and man, he didn't go fishing. He got in a buddy of his car and he went up to gamble at a casino boat somewhere. And he's not even in the same state. That's a bastard search. You thought this, but no, he's somewhere completely different. And those happen all the time because they're expected to be here and they aren't. Which actually is a big thing that stimulates the search, right? But maybe they're not there because they did something totally different than what everybody else thought. Locating any clues. Direction finders, you know, if I can find 3 tracks, I can give you a direction of travel. And just search in general. But that investigation, that's huge, because you're gonna get false clues. You're gonna get false eyewitness reports. We have been pulled off a hot trail by a report that the person was 10 miles away, because we had limited resources and we thought this was a credible source. So we took people off here and went to look here because we were told he was just seen here. 1,000 yards ahead, dead body laying on the side of the road. Actual search. Some of the people standing there saw turkey vultures circling, didn't say anything. Communication, very important. They didn't feel they knew enough. I mean, it could have been deer, could have been roadkill, whatever. We just had a state trooper tell us the dude had been seen here. So that interviewing, understanding what is an actual clue and what's not, it's big. Okay, types for that kind. Let's jump through all that. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna go through all that. We're gonna flip through. Still good stuff. So investigators, somebody that can sift through all that information, knows the right questions to ask. They're trained, clue-conscious, composite hasty teams, which is hilarious that they say hasty teams here when it said rapid response earlier. But anyway, man trackers for tracking and sign cutting. Our whole deal is not that we see a track. Anybody can see a boot print in the mud. That's not tracking. Where we get into it is being observant, looking at the entire environment, paying attention to our sound, nose, anything that's going on. Decision points in the trail. Is this going to be an easy route? Is this a difficult route? Is there more likely to be something up there? We start looking for clues. And when we do find tracks, oftentimes, like Thule said, once we can get on track, we will look for the most minuscule things that most people will overlook. It can be difficult. That's why we need to practice every day if we're going to be man trackers. So, dogs, air scent, tracking. We don't have any dog people in here right yet, do we? What's always the weak point? It's never the dog, right? So that's the onus is on you guys. So if you're going to run a dog, their smell's amazing. Being able to communicate with them, being able to know what they're actually telling you, knowing the situation, helping them work, that's huge. So, I mean, everybody in this has got to be highly skilled. A lot of times people think, oh, I'm going to go for a dog because the dog does all the work. It's like driving a race car. You're not going to jump into Indy 500, right? Just because you got a high-performance car or dog. Aircraft. I mean, obviously, besides being a pilot, being able to be functional in anything you're looking for in an aircraft. Running a drone. The same one that we had where there were tons of four-wheelers and side-by-sides running, and we missed the guy. There were how many drones up in the air at different times? I thought there was more than 2.
No, just there was one on the first day, and then the finding was a drone finding after we left.
Okay, well, I had thought there was a bunch of them, but it was at least the second guy.
There may have been on the first day too, I don't remember.
But
at least 2.
you've got to be able to know what you're looking for, and you've got to know how to operate. Other very mobile trained resources, we talked about how ATV and mounted can be good or bad. Mounted, I love horses. I trained horses for many a year, taught lessons, all kinds of stuff. I love dogs. I'm a licensed veterinary technologist. I've taught canine behavior. I've taught equine behavior. That does not mean I can go jump on a horse and I'm immediately going to be good at doing a mounted search. You've got to train in that specific discipline. Okay, type 2 is still faster, but it is not the fastest. This is where our hasty teams haven't seen anything yet, or we think we need to send people out quick, but we've got to make sure we don't miss anything. So efficiency is key here. We're not going to be at a crawl, but we're not just sending one team out through the woods. This is where we're not quite to a line search, but we're going to send multiple folks out to different areas of high probability. This is where the search urgency is high, and we need to not miss anything, but we've got to go ahead and get people out there because we can't take the time. Because all these big things you see on TV where the children go missing and people get out there holding hand in hand and they walk through the brush, 90% of those people would not see something if they stepped on it. And that's not being mean, that's just, unless you're trained to look like that, you're going to miss clues. And when you do a search like that, you obliterate all clues because you've stomped all over everything. So this is that weighing the level we want to go at, okay? Efficiency, sort of fast, but also pretty good probability of detection, kind of going through there. Often employed after type 1 efforts, because man, Tasty's teams, we don't always get there at once. It's not always a great setup. Sometimes there's only 5 guys there, and you've got to leave nobody can be by themselves. So 2 people over here at command and 3 people going out in a team. That's the hasty search. Bam, they're out. Then everybody else shows up. Or then the next group shows up so you can organize it and get a little more done, okay? Maybe the initial search tactic used in other search segments, particularly heavily vegetated areas. Should be used when subject responsiveness is assumed to still be high. You can call up their name and all kinds of stuff. Type 2 efforts are often effective in locating clues. Whenever the dogs indicated where that guy was on the riverfront, we didn't quite have enough people or capability to do a grid search. It was halfway between a grid search and one of these searches, because that area was the highest probability. So we took what we had, we spread them out, and just moved through seeing the best we could. And we weren't just looking for the person, we were looking for any sign of his passage. Used in specifically defined segments for search areas. So you've got 5 people, you're going to send them here, 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 here. You pick the areas of high probability and then you send them out. Not all in one bunch. You're trying to be efficient and fast, even though you're not covering everything. Used to follow up on segment clues where a clue has been found. So, a clue has been found does not always mean it is an accurate clue, that it is whatever. But if we think we saw something in this area, we heard a report that the person was seen in this area, now we're going to concentrate more of our searchers to that area. Uses an open grid with wide spacing between searchers. Search routes are often followed using compass bearings. So start here, 86 degrees, move that direction for 300 meters. That area is reported to be a place where we might see something. Okay, and that may only be a small portion of the entire search area. Okay, most effective resources, investigators, because you're collecting clues, you're finding out what things mean. Clue conscious teams, dogs, obviously, trackers, sign cutters, aircraft, trained grid teams, other. This page doesn't mean much, because in any search, you're gonna have what you have. Like you show up and you can request all day long, but basically it's whatever shows up unless you need something special, and then you start putting pressure on people. You say, hey, we really need this, get us whatever you can, and you go back to your work while the EM or whoever is trying to get more resources. So, man, you're not just gonna be able to cherry pick, I want one of these, and these, and these. Because any of these, if you got a helicopter sitting there, I don't care if the helicopter's on that list, you're gonna be like, yeah, we want to search over there. Use what you got. And she was saying there's not many helicopters like the autistic young man over at Reed's Orchard. There was a helicopter there with one of the local there's multiple fire departments there, and there was Air Evac. Air Evac was there. And immediately we sent out, and none of the searchers there. I think myself and Jim Duke were there, and we had not even been inserted into the search yet. But they were sending out groups of firefighters, and the helicopter was doing a grid search pattern. They were using what they had. That's what you're gonna do. Type 3, slower, highly systematic search using thorough techniques. Oftentimes this is where we're gonna stand so far apart like we did, and we're gonna say, we really wanna search this area. Can I see, as far as you, can I see a cigarette butt? You know, what can I see? Can I see a poker chip size? And then we're gonna close out this area being like, okay, well, at this point, I can see something this size with this probability of detection, so this area's been covered that much. This is slower. That is a bit of a problem because you want speed. It can also be off-putting because you'll think you have absolutely searched the area. There are clues you'll miss. There's always a way you can miss clues. So don't let this one seem like 100%. Should only be used as last resort because honestly, it is a grid search. You're destroying a lot of, you're just tearing all kinds of stuff up. Usually type 3 searches are extremely destructive to clues because persons are not clue conscious. This is the type that they will start out with if all they have are untrained volunteers. If you had a bunch of untrained volunteers, you would spend all you could to hold them back while a hasty team went out, or any skilled person went out. But then if you had nothing else, then you would do your best to organize them and grid search it, okay? This is typically what they refer to as grid search. Type 3 is closed grid, your sweep search. Trained grid search teams, what is that? Sorry.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't.
Well, because seriously, the grid team is last resort, and you can train in how to do a grid search. You know what I mean? Like, your whole team should train in how to grid search. But you don't have a team flown in especially because they're a trained grid search team. Yeah. This is more of your forensic investigation. If you get to this point, you don't want volunteers because they will destroy everything. This is more of what you would consider highly trained, because these are people crawling around on their hands and knees with, you know, magnifying glasses, and they're spritzing stuff, looking for blue lights and all that. Black light, yeah, that stuff. Yeah, if not done properly, can destroy clues and crime scenes. That's ridiculous. Even if done properly, it will probably destroy most of it. If done improperly, you're probably going to blow something up. I mean, or just like completely wipe out good clues, okay? Requires a lot of manpower. I don't know about that because they're leaning towards using volunteers to be this far apart, and that it's just not efficient. It is very time consuming. It's ridiculous. You know how long it would take to search this room doing that? With the people in here, we'd be in here for an hour or two, trying to be like, do I see where a snail has crawled on this floor? Type stuff. Looking up underneath, looking for gum, looking for whatever. Protective clothing, we won't spend a lot of time on it because it's very in-depth. Oh, look at that. Usually in a type 4 search, the police will want to have the idea.
Bag and tag.
Bag and tag, except you don't want to be. Now, that said, by not wanting to own it, don't hesitate. You call anything in. You see something that looks like trash, call it in. By not owning it, you going close, seeing that, you may be destroying clues going up to it. You know what I mean? If they say, I'll just pick it up, or I'll stick it in a plastic baggie, I don't want to incriminate myself. I don't want to destroy clues. If you are specifically trained, and you absolutely know that's the best thing, that's fine. Now, there are times like whatever he was talking about on clues, where you may have to protect them. Say it's about to rain, it's about to be a big storm. It could wash it all away. Maybe you cover it with a tarp. Maybe you, whatever you can, or if nothing else, if you're about to be like pulled out of there, everybody's got to go because it's flooding, you might have to take a plastic baggie or a glove, and yeah, because that's the best you can do. But you better have confirmation that it is okay to do that. And you better have a bunch of people watching you do it. Always with hesitation, do you move or touch any kind of clue, or even approach it. Even if you're checking somebody, it better be somebody that is medically trained, and it better be I need to go check that person. If they are obviously deceased, you know, you may not want to approach them because it's a crime scene. If you're going to have somebody have one person go, only one person, enough people close to watch and help if they need assistance, but that one person goes in one lane and comes right back out that lane after they've done what they're going to do. Okay, updated search methods. The spacing between two searchers in a particular area and at a particularly close time. So critical separation. If me and you are walking through here, we can see everything in here. We take 2 steps this way, I can't see what's under that table.
Right.
So now our critical separation needs to be closer, because now she's looking under that side, I'm looking under this side. Makes sense, right? So depending on brush, depending on how thick things are, 2 searchers are said to be at critical separation when an object is halfway between them at the limit of visibility for each searcher. So if it's between us, we're going to see it. So that can expand or decrease depending on what you're going through. This, I laughed when I saw this, because that is supposed to theoretically give a 50%, but produces a practical POD of close to 80%. Probability of detection is always lower than people think it is, because they are not aware of what they don't know. That is why you want the highest possible probability of detection, but try to be honest about it. Now, don't undershoot it, because if you say I only had 15%, that pretty much means we've got to research that area. But like he said, if you say it's 80%, we'll be like, oh, I don't know about that. Which now means I have no clue what the probability of detection actually was, because I don't know your capabilities. So it's one of those very subjective. There's a million, you saw all that math that she had up there? There's a million different formulas that get real specific on probability of detection that you don't need to know unless you're in an entirely different position that's filling out this paperwork. Your probability of detection needs to be, how aware was I? How small did a clue have to be in that area for me to make sure I saw it? Think about it, if there's a riverbank or something, if something's up underneath the bank, that'll affect it. If there's a dip, that'll affect it. If they could have been up in a tree. Things that you don't even realize could affect it. And is your probability of detection for just a person, for a clue, what size clue? All makes a
And the
difference.
sun setting, it's shady.
Yes,
and-
although we're gonna get into that here in a
We just
minute.
even drive it, you're like, I can't. see it.
Midday is one of the worst times to look. You'd think lots of sun, but it washes everything out. The time of the day where you get slanted light, where when it hits something it casts a shadow on the backside, you notice outlines, you notice things better.
I love baseball.
Most of us trackers prefer to track at night because we control the light source.
I just like it.
We control the direction, we control the intensity, we control the angles. Sweep searches, okay, sound sweep search for persons presumed to be alive and responsive, standard sweep search for adults, children, and again, this is just terminology. So, sound sweep, that's where we can call out, right? We can call, if they can hear us, they'll call back, or they'll blow their whistle or whatever. Standard sweep search for adults and children wearing normal colored clothing, blah, 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 where no particular information is available. Maybe they can hear us, maybe they can call back, maybe we can see them, maybe not. We're kind of going on, just we don't have a lot of information. High visibility sweep search, I don't know of any time we're gonna be on that unless a search and rescue person has gone missing in the middle of a search because they didn't follow protocol. They may be wearing high vis and be lost out in the woods. It can happen.
We wore ours.
We were already.
Nice. Low visibility sweep search is very common for unconscious persons, that happens a lot, or known to be wearing subdued colors, camouflage, whatever. Infants, people that won't call out, people that are hiding, people that don't want to be found, there's all kinds of stuff that fit into that. And body sweep search for persons presumed to be dead. Okay, how vision reacts to daylight. We can go into that ad nauseum because every one of us, for one, is different. And you will think you can see a lot more than you can see. And it is important how you use that light to the point of if there are clues or there's a potential area or a hot spot for clues, we call them track traps. We will have specific hats that we wear, or maybe somebody takes a tarp or a coat or a jacket and holds it over to shade it from the sun so that one of us can come in with our ever-present flashlights and shine from specific angles. Do you guys see the color of that? That's an expensive flashlight that most people wouldn't buy because everybody likes bright LEDs now. We found these purely because of that specific hue and that its candle power is that orangish yellow candle power. It's going to cast a lot of shadows. So you see what it does to that, and how I turn it there is going to cast totally different shadows. So different clues and things that I can see, ways that the light shines, see those bright spots where it acts as a lens through there. If I can shade it, it's going to be different underneath where it's not got the other light source coming at it. So whenever it comes to how you react to daylight, your pupils are constricted, you're going to be more under strain, you will get a headache quicker, you will get dehydrated quicker, which affects your vision. It says colors and fine details are seen, but in direct daylight, I feel like colors tend to be washed out more. When it's a slightly overcast or it's moist in the air, your colors are going to pop, right? Images are perceived towards center field of vision. Tunnel vision is right in front of you. You're not catching your periphery. Your periphery is very important. Know just how far you can see in your periphery. It's kind of weird that I can see that, right? That seems almost past me. But know and pay attention to that because honestly, with our lights, we have what's called a halo effect on some of them, and the brightest portion is not always the best place for us to look. That just further portion that still has light but is dim, sometimes we can see that a lot better than we can the direct light. We'll take these big bright lights, we'll hold them real close to the ground. My walking stick, I'll have lights strapped to it so that I'm holding them right on the ground and out. So I can see things from a different angle. So daylight, wash as much of that out. You will not see the shadows and stuff, okay? And you gotta think of how it affects the shadows. You won't see into shadows as well. If you're in the shadow looking into daylight, you see better. If you're in daylight looking into shadow, you can't see anything. It all has effect. And it all should be taken into effect when you're planning on who you send out, okay? How vision reacts to darkness. Pupils dilate, let more light in. You guys already know that. You know what? I'm just gonna skip that because I'm not even gonna go over the notes I wrote. You get the gist on that. May need to use peripheral vision at night more, but people don't. They get very, very tunnel vision. That's why they walk into so many sticks and they get poked in the eye and they trip over stuff. They're focused on one spot. If there's any ambient light, sometimes I'll turn my light completely off. I've got pretty good night vision. And if nothing else, I may do that for a while just to let it acclimate and look around to see if I can see anything else going, okay? Sometimes I move through the woods better that way. I'm less likely to trip, get stuck in the eye. And whether you've got a headlamp on, whether you've got a ball cap that's protecting your eye some, makes a difference. Some people will wear it down here where it's shining down and it never comes up into your eyes. All kinds of stuff make a difference. Scanning requires concentration. Use the same routine for day scanning. If an object is spotted, it should be looked at off center, not viewed straight on. Honestly, that's coming at it from different angles makes a huge difference. And did your subject move through there in the daylight? Was your subject moving in the daylight? Was your subject moving at night? Makes a huge difference, right? All of this is stuff you might not normally think of, but it has to be taken into effect whenever you're deciding where to search urgency, and who you send out. It takes at least 20 minutes for your eyes to adjust to the darkness. Longer than that for some people, shorter than that for others. Avoid night blindness by not depending on beams of flashlights, as well as not shining light into other searchers' eyes. We have a lot of different flashlights with a lot of different lumens, some of the slower or lower candles. You know, everybody wants those 5 million lumen, you know, shine to outer space. We're in there buying like the lowest lumen we can find because we want some of those shadows. Sometimes we want different stuff. Consider using a red lens or flashlight to protect night vision. That actually does help. I'll use that a lot whenever I'm walking and looking at a map because I can still look out and I'm not as blinded as by a white light. Like I said, the yellow lights work better for shadows and contrast sometimes. Some people like green lights. We will use contractor chalk to mark clues sometime that show up in black light and other colored lights at a distance that are easy to see, like markers, better than tape. Look for shapes, shadows, contrast, and movement. That gets into a whole thing with tracking because we'll talk about shine or compression or anything that makes something stand out as being different. Because every time I do that, at the right angle, I can see exactly where I just touched that. Shine encompasses the oils on my finger, the dirt I just wiped up, literally the way I might have compressed the wood or the synthetic stuff a little bit, and from different angles it just jumps out at me loud, but from right over it or at certain angles completely disappeared. So think about that when you're searching, looking around, checking your six, looking underneath stuff, looking up in trees, everything looks different. I'm so sorry, it's so late, I'm going fast. Trying to keep you awake. All right. Dividing area into 3 zones. This is whenever you look, you're looking for ground. Yeah. You're looking for ground stuff below the knee. You're looking for stuff up here at body level, but you're also looking for this up here. They could have climbed a tree, yeah, you may not think it very often. They could have hung something in a tree. They could have disturbed some birds. They could have died and they'd be carrying birds flying overhead. They could be up on a hill away from you. So they may not have climbed up anything big, but whereas you're looking down here at your level, if you don't look up and see what's going on up here. Also paying attention to attractants, a big storm cloud, all kinds of stuff like that. So you've got to look up. You've got to look in this area, and you've got to look down here because you're going to have limbs that they may have brushed up here. So maybe the oil from their forehead has caused that leaf to turn a little bit and be a little bit different color. You got to be really observant to see that, right? Maybe they creased the leaf as they went by. there's things that you'll start being able to notice that it sounds crazy, but it's definitely, once you train your eye to see that, you can do a lot. The drag may be all that drug through some high grass, and the grass has flopped back, but now the grass is interlaced. It's not even all going the same direction, but over here it's not interlaced. Over here it's kind of laying together, but when someone pushes through it, it comes back, and now it's interlaced. Crazy, isn't it? Okay, so 6 inches or less, it's usually an animal trail. 10 inches, more likely to be a human, bipedal. You stand wider. You may notice that on the ground. You may notice that in the brush up here. They may step over something, but they have broken a limb up here. So up here, here, and there. You gotta look in the different areas. Night vision. You may or may not get a chance to mess with this. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I want some bad, but it's expensive. We do have teams that have it. A lot of teams will have what they call FLIR, F-L-I-R, forward-looking infrared. Depending on how much they spend on it, their distance that it is effective is huge, okay? Some of the drones, some of the helicopters will have it. Knowing the difference between what type of night vision you've got, whether it's infrared, whether you're seeing heat or thermal signatures, or whether you're just picking up low light, makes a big difference, okay? And there is a huge gulf and difference in the different types of night vision you can get. We won't spend much time on it, but you can see how that will work. I've seen some awesome stuff with different temperatures. Like with certain thermals, you can see where someone has walked just because their feet are so hot where it's touched the ground is affecting, where they've brushed the grass. It's pretty cool. But yeah, we won't go heavy into that because you can delve into that further off, right? It can also cause you to get tunnel vision. So there are definitely added dangers where you're not paying attention. Your depth perception is a problem. Talks about falling off a cliff, eye injuries. This is just at night in general. Bears, snakes, etc. I haven't run into too many bears on searches. Snakes are definitely a possibility. Animals with distemper, old wells, sinkholes. There's all kinds of things that can be bad. There can be where someone has cleared an area. We went on a search recently and a hunter had gone through with like a machete or something, was just chopping saplings so they could see. There were these punji sticks, like spikes sticking up about knee level. If you tripped or anything, you'd have been toast. At night, that becomes much more dangerous, okay? Becoming lost and disoriented, a lot of people get real disoriented at night. They can't tell where they're at. They can't see very far off. Fear of the dark and just not being prepared, all like that. Tracking overview. Tracking is something that should be used early on in a search, because honestly, the least pollution we can have, the better. Get us out there quick. Before the very clues or signs that could lead you to the lost subject is stomped to the ground by the searchers who first responders. It's always fun to like, a lot of times, it's funny, it's like the dog people used to see us, like we're like, all right, we've got direction travel, I got 3 tracks going this way, and you'll let the dogs are faster than us, man, they're fast. And they will, like, the dog isn't a big issue, because the small paws, I can tell the difference between the dog, but then like the handler will come across and throw like right through the tracks. You know what I mean? So you gotta think about what you're doing, whether it's gonna affect the ability to see clues. Little red star, search team is made up of 2 or more individuals. Okay, so we'll have like team leader, radio operator, navigator, like that. The thing is to have identified positions in the team. There is usually always a navigator. Now, one person can do 1 or more of these positions, right? You want a safety, somebody that's watching out for everybody's safety. You want somebody doing navigation. You want somebody on comms. Sometimes all 3 of those are the same person. Sometimes that's even the team leader. And they will actually be in back, not even the main one looking for clues, because they're just trying to manage everybody else, okay? But it's important that each of those team members know who is responsible for taking care of that position. And the fact that you're not, you may have 4 people, not 3. You may have 2 people. The one thing that you should never have is 1 person, okay? Tracking something that will not and cannot be taught in the classroom. You'd be surprised how many slides we can go through on this stuff. I would always prefer to be out in the woods or something. because this will talk about dirt time. The real lessons you will learn will come from experience in the field and dirt time dedicated to it. You actually have to train your eye to be able to pick that stuff up. You've got to constantly look, you got to constantly feel. We do a lot by feel. You've got to understand, whenever we talk dirt time, like if you ride horses, we talk horse time under saddle. Dirt time for a tracker, we may go out and we may cover a lot of ground. Or we may spend 3 hours on our hands and knees looking at one track. We have these things called spore pits. Looks like a big sandbox that we'll go make tracks in and we'll just study. Sometimes our practices are very interesting and sometimes they would bore you to death. Because we talk, you got all kinds of theories that one track can have 5,000 pressure release points in it. They can have infinite number of pressure release points in it. You might see 3. You know what I mean? You work with what you've got. And whereas you see a track and we start talking about, oh, well, he was walking, carrying a pack, he had a shovel in his right hand, I think he's dehydrated, he likes the color purple. Some of that. Anyway, you will get the big time trackers that will say they can determine a person's mental status, and there are ways you can. Like, it's ridiculous. If you get good enough at it and you have a good enough track, the things that you can determine are intense. And I've done some forensic tracking classes that are really cool.